There are people who join established company, and there are people who join to establish a company. And I just think that the way you guys are building, it looks to me and to everyone who's watching this that you are building a very established setup, and that with that mindset. Ganesh, thank you so much. You have gotten up early, very early for this interview. You are in Vancouver and you are the founder of Covalent, which is a unified API which gives visibility to the billions of data points on blockchain. Now, this is very interesting. Tell us about Covalent and what got you to spot this opportunity and build this.
Absolutely, Shradha. So happy to be here. 5:30, 4 a.m., 3 a.m. It's all good because cryptos never stops, blockchains never stop. So very happy and honored to be on this interview with you guys. So a little bit about myself. I'm a physicist by training. I got my start in cancer research, so building pharmaceutical drugs. And it was a very successful run. So I spent half my career in that arena. The challenge with pharma is that it takes about 5 years to get your product out to market. And my peers from engineering school were building products, getting funded, and even going through a liquidity event in 18 months or less. And I started to miss that when my friends were going through that cycle. So I pivoted my career to the big data space. And for the last decade, I've been doing big data technologies. And about 3.5 years ago, so late 2017, we found this opportunity that blockchains are cool, blockchains are exciting, but for it to actually reach mainstream enterprise adoption, it'll have to speak to existing investments. So these investments could be the talent, because enterprises are not going to retrain their existing people. This could be the processes, and this could be the technologies. You always have some kind of computer system in the back office that's been chugging along for the last 2 decades or so. Why move it? Why change it if it's not broken? So you need some piece of connecting middleware, connecting technology for these newfangled technology called blockchain to speak to existing investments. So that's where the idea germinated for Covalent. Covalent comes from covalent bonds in chemistry, which is this binding agent. And the analogy in our world would be joining centralized systems with decentralized systems, or the past legacy with the future. So that's where the analogy comes from. And we just have a lot of fun with chemistry because that's where my background is. If you look at our logo, it's like a chemical bond with orbitals. And yeah, but that's where the chemistry reference stops. So it started in 2017. And then we can go into what the rest has been. But that's been the genesis story. The founding team are very strong database engineers. So I have about a decade of experience in the database technology world. And my other co-founder, Levi, built CouchDB at IBM. So also a big data expert. And also he was on the founding team of the first Bitcoin exchange in Canada. So not only is he familiar with databases, but also blockchain technologies.
I was told last that the market cap of startups in blockchain is around $3 trillion already. And that brings me to the question, you started in 2017 in a hackathon. So tell us, what got you to pick this? And if you can tell us, through example, who are some of your clients, customers who use this, and how does it benefit them?
Absolutely. So hackathons are an amazing place for developers to build early prototypes of ideas they have in a safe space. There's no expectations beyond the 2 or 3 days that you hack on. So I've got to admit that initially I wrote off blockchains because I thought blockchains are slow, blockchains are they're not very compelling from a technology piece, and that's because I missed the whole political and economic revolution that blockchains bring forth. It's not just a technology play, because databases are much faster than blockchains. So why bother with blockchains if the existing tech just works, right? But it's the political and the economic and the social effects that matter a lot. So I wrote it off. So at a hackathon, on the advice of one of my friends, we just went to this hackathon and built this prototype. But we ended up winning that hackathon. So we built the initial version of Covalent. It wasn't called Covalent there, obviously, but we built this in about 2 nights, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. And we ended up winning that hackathon, and that's when we realized that maybe this is a viable commercial opportunity for us to focus on. And so we started a company right after that. So this would have been November of 2017. And I've got to admit, this is probably the worst time to start a company, especially in the blockchain space, because the next 2 years was just dead. Bear market. So we built like a fair enough product in about 6 months. And then we went to market. I'm going to put go to market in air quotes because there was no market. So we went out knocking on a lot of doors. Nobody was responding. There were no customers, no traction, no revenue. And then, just like in about a year and a half, I started to get essentially anxiety on, what are we doing? Our life is slipping away. And this is where I took a detour to go climb Mount Everest base camp, just to, get some sensibility into it. But that's a story there. But then 2020, I would say like late 2019, early 2020, things started to really pick up. And so suddenly there are these multiple waves of traction that blockchain-based products were starting to see. So this could be along, DeFi, NFTs, DAOs, lots of use cases, stable coins. And so by 2020 summer, we found ourselves profitable. And until then, so this was like a 2.5 year long journey. We had taken no outside capital. So we bootstrapped the company for the first 2.5 years. But when we became profitable, that was a major sigh of relief for us, right? Because suddenly we don't have to care about runway and all this stuff. Now it's about how do we build something sustainable? How do we build something enduring? And this is when we went and raised outside capital in order to scale the company. But I will answer that in a different part of the interview.
How are you building the company? And of course, the capital that you raised, how are you building the company? And because today you are looking at such huge data sets, what is differentiating Covalent in the market?
Absolutely. So this is not my first startup. This is actually my fourth startup. So there's some not so secret recipes to building a startup, because no matter what the industry or the technology cycle is, building a startup is kind of the same. The recipe is kind of basically the same. And I would say there are probably 3 or 4 pillars of how we're building Covalent, not just the technology, but also the institution. And so the first, it comes down to talent. So we've been able to attract a solid, like high caliber set of serial entrepreneurs. So our CFO started another big, debt financing company. So he was the founder of that. Of course, Levi, the other co-founder, is also a serial entrepreneur. If you look at our head of ecosystem, this is like his third company. He ran music startups in the past, fundraising startups in the past. Same with our developer operations and token marketing and community. So it comes down to the team. So I'm very proud of the fact that we've put an excellent team together. In fact, I joke that if I interviewed at Covalent today, I'm probably not eligible to get a job, because the team is so much.
No. Oh, you're being too humble. But that, I have to stop you here and ask this question, because it will be very, very important for a lot of entrepreneurs and people starting up. How did you put this team together? How did you manage to get all of you to come together?
I think it comes down to the vision of the founders and the traction we had. So the market for talent is extremely competitive today. There are hundreds of startups, hundreds of well-funded companies out there, exciting opportunities. But to build a team, for them to give up what the other options are, to join Covalent, where it's there's still risk. There's still risk involved with Covalent, right? But we're building something that has never been built before. We can really build an iconic company. That is what the opportunity is, right? So there are some kind of people who want to join a already established company. There are some kind of people who want to join a company and make it established. It really depends on the personality type. So that is what we've picked for. And I've known these peers like 5, 6, 7 years. In some cases almost a decade, right? I've been wanting to work with them for a decade. So So that's how I've been able to. I think it's because I'm very passionate about this space. I'm passionate about building something iconic, and you can see my past other companies I've built, and so that's really where they just jump in both feet. And then there's some mechanics, like we always pay above market in the at Covalent, right? And then the work is extremely challenging, and so it attracts a different personality type for sure. So that's what I'm very lucky and honored to have this team join us. Team that we have is extremely important. I would say the second thing is the product that we have. Now it comes down to the vision that the founders have, and we have a 5 to a decade long roadmap on how Covalent will be a critical part of the blockchain infrastructure piece. And this comes from our experience with other technology waves that have happened in the database world, in the cloud space, and so on. So this is why I would say a lot of the stuff that we're building today is not really useful until maybe a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years from now. But that's okay. It's future investment because the market will come up. This is the exact same decision that we made in 2017. And now in 2020, we have the best product in the market, right? Because we've had years of investment that has gone into it. So I would say the technology and the product is extremely important. And we have a very strong vision on how Covalent should sit in the ecosystem. And it's a bet at the end of the day. It's a choice that you're making, the entrepreneur is making, and the team is making on what the future will play out. And we want to build that future. The third thing is the community. I think people can copy our team. You can probably, hire, give more, bonuses and whatever. Financially, it can be much more lucrative. You can definitely copy the product, copy the technology, buy a competitor. But a community is something that you can never steal away or you can never compete on. So I'm very proud of the Alchemist program that we have built at Covalent. So we designed the Alchemist program as a growth and leadership program. So essentially, you need to participate in Covalent. And of course, all of the community members get airdrops of the Covalent token. But you can see some amazing stuff. Like yesterday, there were two extremely smart and intelligent women who gave a workshop on data analysis at one of the universities here, completely organic, completely on their own. And so we have global expansion. So any piece of content, including this interview, will get translated into about a dozen languages within the next couple of days, right? So we've built this whole army of supporters who just carry forward the message. I think that's that much more powerful rather than just me and the founding team talking about Covalent, having thousands of people. So I think we have about 2,000 people who are on our, they're called alchemists, and they're doing different tasks on behalf of Covalent, and they're just taking the message forward. So I'm very proud of how these alchemists have leveled up, because you can see their growth and all of the milestones are set up for to support their growth. And to fund that program, we've allocated 1% of the entire company's equity, which is millions of dollars, just giving it to these guys to support their program. So I think that's also a very compelling, very exciting vector for our growth.
Tell us again about the product in detail, please, because I think the differentiation also lies at the core, because data science, data analytics is anyways very specialized, but there has to be a lot more intelligence. And on top of it, you're doing for blockchain and on blockchain. What, if you can go deep and tell us about this, what are you building?
Absolutely. So let me talk about who we're building this for. I think that's a good place to start. And then how what I feel the technology cycles are going to roll out and how our product is positioned for these cycles. So the base premise behind blockchains is that in theory, blockchain data is public, right? It's completely visible. You can go to a block explorer, check it out, and all that stuff. But getting it out in a programmatic fashion, getting it out in a reliable fashion is just impossible today. It's just too hard. And the other thing is you have to download, terabytes of data. You have to crunch through all these numbers just to pull something as simple as what was my balance, right? What was the balance in my account? It's such a simple question. It just takes a lot of work. And this work has to be repeated across every single team that's building some kind of financial product on the blockchain. So that is the core problem that we've solved. So we've provided an experience for developers. So our target audience are developers. It's a middleware, which means like there's no UI, there's no buttons you can click. It's meant to be integrated with an existing solution, and it's an enabling piece of technology. So developers, they can use this one API, one unified API. It doesn't matter what blockchain you want to support. We support about a dozen blockchains today. And this one API, it gives you balances and positions and historical granular transaction activity, just like a banking app. So if you sign into SBI, for example, you log into the app or the website, you have a bunch of accounts. Probably you have an Indian rupee account, you have a registered account, maybe you have a US dollar account, maybe there's a margin account. And behind each account, there's a balance, there's an outstanding balance, and there's a list of transactions that have enabled that on that account. So that exact same view is what we construct for blockchain-based products, except it's an API. So you can't really see it, but you can integrate this and then display it and format it in whatever sense makes sense for your application. So that is what the product essentially is. And we're building for this future, which I think will come, where DeFi, which are these crypto native products, will merge with the broader fintech ecosystem. And so every single fintech company out there, startup or established company, will try to add some kind of crypto experience to their existing products. Because if you look at the millennials and look at these younger generation, they start with crypto. They're able to open up a crypto wallet before they're eligible for a bank account. So to capture this newer audiences, every single fintech company will add a crypto experience, and Covalent is an exact match for that. For them to go to market, they need balances and positions and historical transaction activity, and that is the API that Covalent supports. Now, the other second magical thing about Covalent's API is that it's a universal API. So it doesn't really matter where your customers' assets or your digital assets are. It could be on Ethereum mainnet, it could be on Polygon, it could be on Bitcoin, there's dozens of blockchains. And there's really no change from the developer experience to support a new blockchain. It just works across the board. So it's a unified interface, so it really saves your time to market.
You've indexed 25 billion rich transactions, including every transaction since Genesis for 6 blockchains. Also, 2,000 smart contracts have 2,000K smart contracts have been made available with internal data structures for querying. What are some of the metrics that you are going to be tracking at Covalent?
These numbers are already outdated, right? So we're constantly improving. I think we are supporting 12 blockchains now, and I don't even know how many billions of transactions they are. But you can think of it as like a Google, like the scale of Google, right? So Google's ambition is to index the entire internet. So our ambition is to enter the entire universe of blockchains. So we're never going to stop indexing and adding new blockchains and adding more and more rich information. So if you look at a blockchain like Ethereum, there's new data every 15 seconds. If you look at a blockchain like Polygon, there's new data every 3 seconds. So, just in the last 25 minutes since we started this interview, there's already been thousands of transactions on these blockchains, right? So the data is constantly evolving, constantly growing. So in terms of the numbers that we care about, we ultimately care about traction. So there are hundreds of blockchains out there, blockchain networks. So, anyone can start their own blockchain network. And from the 2017 ICO era, there's like hundreds of projects that were funded. But ultimately for us, because we're an enabling piece of technology, it's only interesting for us if there's traction on the underlying blockchain. So Polygon has a lot of traction, Ethereum has a lot of traction, but there are a lot of these other blockchains that have no traction. So ultimately it comes down to users. So, for us, the utility of Covalent only increases if there's more users on the other side. Right? That's where the flywheel gets started. So I would say ultimately those are the numbers that we track. How many end users are we actually able to capture using Covalent?
Ganesh, if you can share with us your monetization strategy, and are you monetizing right now with all these developers using Covalent?
Absolutely. So this is where we've pivoted our business model a couple of times, depending on the cycle. So initially, we started out as a traditional SaaS business. So software as a service, where developers can pay for the service using the credit card. So it's not different from any other SaaS company. There are hundreds of these SaaS companies. And that is how we became profitable last summer. And then after raising funding, what we did is, because the opportunity is so big, we did not want to include that friction, because a lot of these startups are early stage. They don't really have product market fit. And these developers just want an API to build their product. So why not capture the hearts and minds with the product and with the vision of Covalent, and capture their wallets maybe next year or the year after, because we have the balance sheet and the funding to support that. So we are not monetizing developers as of today. What we've done is we've pivoted to monetizing the blockchains themselves. So Covalent is a network. There's the supply and the demand. The demand comes from developers who are engaging and using the data, and the supply comes from the underlying blockchain that we're indexing. So we've positioned Covalent as a biz dev Kickstarter, as a wallet creation, as we are solving some core technological and core product problems in product gaps for blockchains. So we've switched around to start monetizing the supply side. So these blockchains pay us right now for access to our few thousand developers. So it kickstarts their biz dev efforts. So that's how we've switched around. And then I would say later this year, when the actual network launches, the Covalent network launches, we will be completely out of the picture. So it'll just be a decentralized system, and the supply and the demand side will directly transact with each other, and we're not going to be in the middle. So it'll just be this public utility that anyone can go and tap into, and the monetization will be by the network.
Tell me, Ganesh, what do you have to go and tell the blockchain guys to pay you? What gets them excited? Because there's some who are very, very established. And of course, there's some who are very new and do not have that visibility. So what's your conversation like with these guys?
So it comes down to two different things, right? Two bullet points. It's really, really very simple. One is a blockchain requires a set of core features to go to market, right? Blockchain projects themselves are businesses, right? They have to go to market, they have to acquire customers, they have to show traction. So a lot of the blockchains are very immature in terms of their offering. So simple questions like, give me the balances of my wallet, is a question that's very hard to answer for a nascent blockchain. So we help solve that product gap. And so the blockchain itself is making this buy versus build decision, this cost model, where if they try to build this, it's going to take them 6 months to a year. And that's 6 months to a year in a bull market that you don't have time for. So you want to go to market ASAP. So that's a stickler that we solve for these projects. The second thing is access to developers. Just because you have the technology doesn't mean that developers are going to come and build on your platform. You need to do the outreach, you need to do the marketing, and it's a very different style of marketing as opposed to press or media. They're very, very bottoms up kind of marketing. So we help with that as well, because we have a few thousand developers on the Covalent platform. And for those developers to support your new blockchain, it's a unified API. So they literally only have to change one click, and then boom, it's ready on your blockchain. So these two things on how they can get traction, how they can actually move their KPIs, gets them very, very excited. So I think it's a very straightforward value prop exchange of services. And for us, it's our system scales, so it's not a lot of work to support a new blockchain. And the more blockchains we add, more value provides to our existing customers, because now they have access to the new data set, and it's not a lot of work. And so the flywheel just spins faster and faster and faster.
Tell me something, when you have to build something for blockchain on a data set, like, how different is it? And does it require a lot more capability learning than what you would do in an otherwise simple, different, non-blockchain, not simple, but non-blockchain world?
I would say the applications are unique. So that's where the difference comes from. So ultimately, it's like data as raw materials or ingredients to build something more valuable, right? So you can do a credit scoring application. You can build a health of your loans, your order book. There's lots of use cases. So I would say the use cases are different, but the underlying data is still just the same, right? It's just zeros and ones. So there's nothing super different about blockchain data as opposed to telecom data or e-commerce data. They're all like data. It's just like spreadsheets and databases. So fundamentally, the data itself is not very meaningful unless you put the semantic value to it. And that's where the blockchain differentiates, because these products that are being built on the blockchain are very unique. You can't see them. There's no traditional equivalent for the products that are coming out today.
In your field, are you the only one, or tomorrow is it that someone who gets the large amount of data fast will be able to accelerate and build a dominant position?
Absolutely. So there are two aspects to this question, right? One is that can we build a Google-like infrastructure, Google scale infrastructure? And I think it's going to be possible, but it's going to be possible in a way that's respectful to the user. Right now, these big corporations, they hoard user data and they sell it to the highest bidder, right? That's why a lot of consumers are unhappy with it. So I think that's going to change. I would say it's going to take some time, but suddenly corporations are going to be respectful of their customers' data. They're not just going to profit blindly from the data. So that's going to change. So the way Covalent is being built is that it still enables the privacy aspects for the user. So that is one dimension that's completely different. The second dimension is on the competition, whether we can sustain our leadership position. And the question there is always technology cycles, right? There's always going to be startups. There's always going to be hungrier, well-funded, more mission-driven founders. And I think the space is just so big and the opportunity is so much that there's going to be multiple winners. And so we're not the only ones out there. There's definitely competitors out there. And I see startups even today, but they're 3 years behind. But then the technology cycle itself can shift, right? And we'll be falling behind. So that's part of the game. In technology, you can never become complacent and never rest on your success. You have to continue. The saying is that success is like rent, and rent is due every day. So every day you have to pay your dues. You have to build more product, get more customers, improve your product. Otherwise, there's no lock-in, there's no loyalty, right? Why would developers build on a product that's not that exciting, that's not leading, that's not a leader? So yes, we're always we remember the big guys that we disrupted, and we could be disrupted too. It can happen. So we're always open to that option.
APG, which is the biggest API platform, SaaS platform, and the one of the things that they have done well is that they have a very strong community, and the community keeps giving feedback on their product, and the community engages, endorses, and takes them all over. How much focus will you have on community, and is there a feedback loop that you built with this community?
Absolutely. So I would say what differentiates Covalent from other SaaS businesses is the community. So in the case of APG, for example, that community are just customers, right? They don't have equity in the business. Here, the community has equity in the business. Like the team itself only owns a small portion of the Covalent network. The majority of the Covalent network is owned by the community. So that's the key difference. So it is community governed, and it's community driven. The initiatives are all driven by the community. So for an example, just to give you an example, we do these monthly governance calls where essentially the core team speaks to the broader community on all of the initiatives that have gone into Covalent, what is upcoming. It's almost like a public company hearing, right? So every quarter, a public company needs to put out like an earnings session, give guidance to their shareholders. It's exactly the same thing. Here, we're emboldened to the token holders who own the Covalent network. So we're addressable. We've just been hired by the token holders to do a good job. So we do that. Anytime someone wants to add a feature to Covalent or pursue a new business opportunity, they can just openly go and create a proposal. So it's just a governance proposal, and it'll be put against a vote, which the token holders will participate. So the community is actually crucial to the success of Covalent. If the community is not engaged, we see hundreds of people engaged in our community, on our community calls. It's just not, we're not going to really realize the vision of Covalent if the community is not empowered, if they're not given the tools to participate. So just because you call a community if they're not truly part of the system day to day, then it seems like, it's like us versus them. So here, community is core to what we're doing. So this is why, we have like 25 plus OGs. We call them the Alchemist OGs. And these guys are almost like full-time employees of Covalent, right? Except they don't really work for Covalent, but they're just part of the community and they shepherd a lot of the initiatives.
The world is still divided in terms of the good of blockchain and the potential bad of blockchain, or there is a skepticism. In fact, I don't know if you've read that there was a long article on Vanity Fair about the scandal that happened in terms of within the blockchain community. I want to ask you, what are some of the core things that makes you believe that this is going to be defining the world, our world in the coming years? Why do you believe that? And what are some of the things that you think for blockchain as a technology, as a community, as the de facto to grow? What are some of the things that we have to be mindful and conscious of?
Absolutely. I think it's easy to get bogged down by the scams and all of the bad stuff that happens. But any nascent industry goes through that cycle where there are early profiteers, early scammers, scam artists who come in. And it's just a matter of time before, the systems and regulations are in place to support it. But I'm going to give you like a couple of examples here where this gives me a lot of faith that this is the future. So one of the community members who manages our Telegram channel, for example, is very dedicated. So I talk to all of these community leaders because, that's basically my job, to talk to them. And so this guy is an Uyghur Muslim, which is a disenfranchised group. And they've been evicted from China, and they've settled all around the world as refugees. And they're extremely, extremely poor. There's a cycle of poverty. And this guy has been a truck driver for 15 years. And by participating in Covalent, this is going to break his cycle of poverty, because with the rise of Covalent, with the value that we provide to Covalent, as a token holder, he's going to see the benefits from it. So in his downtime, he's a truck driver. He's been driving trucks for 15 years. In his downtime, he moderates our Telegram community. And I've never seen anyone who's as passionate as that, right? So that is an example of where we're truly changing lives, right? So I would say one of the biggest bullet points about blockchains and crypto is the permissionless nature of engagement. A lot of the opportunities are only available to people, who know English, for example, people who have access to the infrastructure, people who have a bank account, people who have access to a television, right? And I think that's where the have and have-nots spread, right? The divide becomes greater. But now I think for the first time in the history of our human race, that people have access to these new financial products, and the blockchain doesn't care, where you live, what you speak, who you are, your race or your color or your creed. None of that matters. What matters is the permissionless nature. Yes.
So now that you are building such a visionary product, do you think that this same thing we might pan out in blockchain world, or there are some safeguards because of which you think it won't happen in the blockchain world? Tell me.
So I think it comes down to regulation, right? So if you look at what's happening in India, the regulators want to control crypto and blockchain because they're skeptical and they feel like they need to protect the end consumer. And I see where they're coming from. And that's because of a lack of understanding. That's what it comes down to. And so you need tools like Covalent that truly shows them where the funds are going. There's no money laundering. There's no terrorist financing. There's no illicit activity. So I think it's just a matter of understanding. So I would say these cycles depend on what society you belong to. So some places in Europe, they've fully adopted blockchain technologies. Some places like India, where the RBI just last week put out a publication on allowing people to enable crypto experiences, right? So that's an example. In the US, it's still extremely hard, very, very difficult. Singapore is completely open, right? So I think the cycles are going to differ based on what society is adopting the technology. But I would say I like to focus on the positive. There's always going to be, uh, strong dictatorships, always, right? Even though democracy has been a tool for centuries, so there's always going to be a dictatorship. So there's always going to be some kind of like society out there that wants to control the crypto blockchain experience, and that's always going to be a case. So I'm not, it's not always a rosy picture, right? But I think it's definitely better than the status quo that we have today.
If we have to lead in the blockchain revolution that is happening, what are some of the things that we need to do? And I would say it cuts across the stakeholders, be it the government, be it the corporates, be it the startup ecosystem. What are some of the things you think that we should be doing?
Yeah, I think there's multiple facets, right? And the first is telling people that this thing exists. And the people with the most amount of time to tinker with these technologies are students. So I think the answer here is college campuses. So hackathons, campus outreach. I know we did a couple of hackathons with about a dozen universities in India. So I think that is where you can see unbridled passion. People who haven't been exposed to how difficult the corporate life is, right? Yet they once they get into the corporate machinery, I think it's a little more difficult, because then it comes down to making your EMI payments, and your life just takes on, right? So I think the college campuses, if you can capture them at that stage, that is, I think, very exciting. So that's like your core developer base, because a lot of these guys will go out and either continue in the blockchain space or work for a corporate entity, and then they introduce blockchain technologies to their your Infosys and your Wipros, right? So I think that's one example. The second is the mainstream adoption, which is going to come from existing. I'm not sure if existing enterprises will adopt blockchain technologies, or it'll lead to a brand new wave of startups. So you see that in other countries where you have traditional banks, and then you have fintech companies, and then now you have these neobanks, which are these hybrid. They don't have really a store. Everything is through the internet. Those kinds of experiences. So I'm not sure what's going to take root in India, whether you're going to have completely new startups. There are definitely lots of startups that are approaching this problem. I don't know if the existing infrastructure will adopt this. It has to be seen. There's always the incumbents who are disrupted, always, right? So there's a story of David and Goliath here. So I'm not sure about that from an enterprise adoption reaching the end user, because if you look at the way Geo is doing their internet outreach, that's very inspiring, right? So we need a company in a leadership position like that to take on blockchain products and push it to the masses, right? Incentivize this, have a long-term view. That's what needs to happen for mainstream adoption. So I'm not sure how that's going to come about. And the third thing is, of course, the government and the regulation. I think there's still stigma. There's still a lot of fear with entrepreneurs. This is why every single blockchain startup in India is actually registered outside there in Singapore or Malta or Gibraltar or somewhere else, right? Because there's a lot of fear that the government will just come in and confiscate your startup, and nobody wants to live in that risky situation, right? So I think there should be more clarity from the governments, and the directive that the RBI put out last week is definitely in the right direction. So I would say these are the three pillars for blockchains to really realize its potential over the coming years. It's going to take a while, but I think that's something that we should all think about.
Besides the attractiveness of the space, what was that within you that got you? Because from my understanding of whatever conversation we've had, I think you're a thoughtful guy who thinks through, goes through things deeply. What got you very deeply excited about picking this and spending this part of your life doing?
Yeah, I would say, it's my own experience. Like in the 2008 crash, that's when I was graduating from college. And there were these things that were going out where I felt wasn't fair. And there was just no transparency. And then People I know have lost their jobs and lost their houses, and it's just a financial crisis, right? A lot of stuff, and then you see these bankers taking on big bonuses, right? So I've never had a job in finance. In fact, I did have an option to go join at a hedge fund doing high frequency finance trading, but I turned down all of those opportunities because I wanted to focus on something else. And so I felt like finance as a sector is far too powerful, and finance doesn't really. They're just rent seekers. That's what it comes down to. So if you need to disrupt and essentially put these investment bankers and people who are just rent seeking, you need technology and processes to basically obsolete them. So that's where this comes from. And with the blockchain, what's exciting is that even with Covalent, all of our finances, all of every single line item, everything is transparent, everything is on the blockchain. You can use our own product to figure out what's going on, right? So everything is just out in the open. So I think if you look at your bank statement and you see all these transactions, you don't really know if the bank has added a couple of rupees here and there, and there's some fraud under the hood. Like, you can't trust it, right? It's all blind. And you can see even with the disbursements of these COVID relief, not everything reaches where it needs to. There's just nothing is like transparent. So I would say that's what it comes down to when you don't really understand, and you can't even ask questions because it's all behind closed doors, right? You can't, even if you're sophisticated, you can't really crunch the numbers yourself. And you see this along everywhere. You see, we've outsourced our data analysis and critical thinking skills to politicians and, for a lack of a better word, the press, right? And so the narrative is spun by people with an agenda. So the citizens don't really have a say in what's going to happen in the future. So I think we should take back control, and the citizens should have access to all of data, and they should come to their own conclusion. So you see this all the time, like election numbers, COVID numbers. It's everything is confusing, right? So I think that was a deep, unsettling kind of experience that I went through. And I think blockchains is going to give you that venue where everything is transparent. And if you know how to crunch data, which we teach you as part of our community method, we teach you how to crunch data. And you should just go seek the answers yourself. Give you that option. Right now, there's no option. If I want answers, well, good luck. There's nobody who can answer you, right?
Gold is a belief. Money as a currency is a belief, of course, backed by the governments and the institution. Blockchain is a belief. Do you agree? And the more we will have people believing it, the more the world will adopt it.
I think so. I think it comes down to, I mean, we're getting into the philosophical bits here, right? I think this is not very concrete, but I think just like how gold is an investment or real estate is an investment, and it only works out if everyone believes the same. And if everyone believes that the world needs to be fair, then I think blockchains and these economic opportunities will be open to everyone. But if not everyone believes that, if the people still want to like crush it, they want to control it, it's not going to reach its potential. So you see that in some places where that's still happening. So I would say yes, it is a belief, and when people experience it for themselves, they start to be a part of that belief when it transforms their life. But until then, I would say it's still very futuristic.
Ganesh, what have you personally learned as an entrepreneur running Covalent?
I've learned a lot. I would say one thing is market cycles. Don't time the market, and I might be an expert in a lot of things, but something that is not on my side is timing the market. So when I started in 2017 Covalent, we were just too early. Like we spent 2 years doing, I don't even know what we did in 2018 and 2019, right? It's just like wasted time. And we built all this stuff, and I would say half of them we had to throw out because it was not in tune with the market. So I would say the number one thing is don't blindly jump into something. Understand what the cycles are going to be and be patient. Second thing is that this is a decade-long, kind of opportunity. So it's not just Covalent; it's like multiple opportunities in the future. So people who have a short-term kind of like outlook, they're not going to be around for a while, right? You're not going to work with people who take shortcuts, who don't give you the best deal, try to squeeze you out. So I think there's going to be multiple cycles in this like revolution. So anyone who's showing that kind of behavior, you just want to cut them out, right? They're just toxic. So I would say those are my two big learnings, where I've made mistakes, and I think you learn more from mistakes than doing things
Yeah,
right. So
yeah.
I would say those are the two things that come to mind.
Do you have family here in India?
A lot of family, actually, they all live in near the Alsur area in Bangalore. My family is
Oh, I
originally
am in
from Chennai.
Alsur right now. I
Yeah,
stay in Alsur. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
just next to the police station. So a lot of my cousins went to Frank Anthony, the school there, and just next to the Baba temple. So I have a lot of family around there. But yeah, the my immediate family, my parents and my siblings, they all live here in Canada and the US. But my grandparents and the rest of my extended family, they live mostly in the south, so Bangalore and Chennai.
Do you come to India? Have you come to India?
I come every year. Just the
Oh,
last year hasn't been possible, but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So now there's a direct flight San Francisco to Bangalore. So yeah. I mean, India is a must because grandparents, extended family, and it's home. So the
Yeah.
food, you don't. There's nothing like the food, right?
It's phenomenal. Thank you so much, and we really rooting that Covalent goes on to become, not why we'll not give an analogy Google of the blockchain world, but establishes Covalent of the blockchain world.
But thank you, Shradha, for this opportunity. I think it's not often that you're able to outline your vision. A lot of this is just like highlights and quibbles and press, just like air quotes. So for me to spend ample amount of time to explain what's going on with Covalent is a rare opportunity. So thank you so much for this
Thank you,
venue.
thank you, thank you so much for this.